Hello, everybody, and welcome to Life on Mars. I'm Alex, CEO and founder of MarsBased, and in this episode, we bring you the top 10 best moments of the English version of this podcast. A few days ago, we released a Spanish version of this in which we covered the first 150 plus episodes of the Spanish version of Life on Mars, and I went through with our friend David to the most instructional, fun, and inspirational moments of 10 of the best episodes we've had so far. In this very episode, we do the same in English. So I wanted to start with probably the biggest name we had in the early beginnings of the podcast, where I hosted the CTO and co-founder of Sketch, Peter Onvley, and we had a very long-winded conversation about some things that are not known about remote companies, like the solitude of the remote worker, not meeting your co-founders or even your team members for years in their case, which struck me as pretty surprising, and other things. And actually, he doesn't speak very much in other podcasts, and I think that's something that that makes me even more grateful for his time. I think we learned a lot from Sketch, a company that we admire, that we actually have used for many years in MarsBased, and we can learn a lot from Peter, both from technical side, but also from the management side of things. So let's take a look at the interview with Peter Onvley. Let's go to the very beginning. What we're going to talk today is mostly how to keep the love alive with your co-founder and with your team after so many years, after experiencing growth. You guys also raised investment. We're going to cover all of this throughout the years. Let's start from the very beginning. You met your co-founder, but actually you didn't meet in person after the launch of the product, right? You had been working for a while. How did that come about?
Yeah, no, that's true. We met a couple of months after we launched that version of Sketch that we worked on together, and that was just because we were both flying to the US and said, well, it makes sense to meet up somewhere before we get on the plane. We worked together for I think at least a year before we saw each other in person, and just back then I was working from London. He was and still is based in Portugal. And we just connected over, I think back then it was called iChat. We just talked like that. Lots of texting, lots of exchanging images, and we just started working together. Yeah, I got in contact with Emmanuel through another designer I worked with before that on another app I built. And that designer, I had never met either. We built that app together. We launched it. He went off to Apple. I was looking for a new designer because of that, and he said, "Hey, let's go have a chat with Emmanuel. I think you two would like each other." And that's how we met. Never meeting in person.
And now for the second highlight, I bring you Founder Partners, a company that I collaborate with. They are from Silicon Valley. They're a group of seasoned entrepreneurs and M&A advisors for bootstrap and semi-bootstrap companies that I like a lot. You will see that these friendships sort of transpires into the conversation. And I think this is a must for companies that want to sell or companies that want to buy, actually. And one of the most fun moments in this episode is where actually Brian and Dimitri go back 20 years, and when they are confronted with the question of what has been your most expensive fuck up, and Brian starts telling a story that sounds familiar to Dimitri's, and I'll leave it at that. I think for not being prepared, it's one of the best sort of improvised moments in the history of this podcast. So let's jump right into it. Time for the last question. This is a signature question of the podcast. You guys have to share, each one of you, your biggest fuck up and how expensive it was. And don't give me the usual things. Like everybody tries to give me I hired the wrong person. No, I will not accept that one. Just try to think of a big fuck up that you've had in your career. If related to M&A, of course, all the better. But and if you can quantify in money how much was lost. Don't worry, we've had people setting fire to the office.
God, yeah. Okay,
So-
okay, this is great. Okay.
You want to go?
Most expensive
I
fuck up.
want to go first. I want to talk about things other than M&A. And Dimitri, you focus on the M&A thing because we can cover it. Okay. I'm going to talk about me as my biggest fuck up as an entrepreneur and as an investor. Dimitri, you talk
Awesome.
about on the okay.
Awesome. I like it. Like your attitude.
So I've started and sold quite a few businesses, and I think I became a little bit too confident, maybe a little too cocky. And I thought that because I was a software guy, I've always been a software and a digital media guy. And so I thought, hey, and I even brought Dimitri in it. I thought I could build a business in the consumer packaged goods space, and it was called New York Tapped, which was basically bottling New York City tap water. And I was pumped. I thought it was a brilliant idea. We were on the David Letterman show. We were all this free PR that came around it. I was like, yeah, this is going to be a cool business. And it went bankrupt. I lost Dimitri's 25 grand as angel investment. And it was just like, God, but that was a screw up. And by the way, I've had others. I mean, I've been a serial entrepreneur. I've had some other failures besides all the things that look glamorous and good on the outside. But what I learned, it's actually the screw ups are about learning, frankly, right? And so I learned I better stick to my knitting. My knitting is software. Just don't go outside of that. Don't look for me to do anything in biotech or semiconductors. Just stay to software.
Alex,
How much money? Yeah.
Alex, have you ever seen a $25,000 bottle of water?
Thank you for rubbing it in my goddamn face, Dimitri. I love you.
I hope you like the anecdote of Brian and Dimitri as much as I have. And go back and revisit the entire episode because I think it's full of wisdom nuggets. And I think that's an episode that every entrepreneur ought to watch at least once in his life. For the next episode, I bring you a personal friend of mine, Julien Truchon. He's the singer and the leader of a death metal grind death metal band. I don't even know how to describe this band, Benighted. It's one of my favorite extreme metal bands. And, sort of grindcore, death metal, brutal death. The band's pretty technical as well. And I really like him. He's a super charming person. And we discuss business and music and technology for band members and touring bands and what do they use, what's the shareholder agreement, how do they finance themselves. Not much of a technologist, but I think I wanted to highlight in this episode what I really enjoyed the most, and I remember like, wow, this is going to blow some people's minds, is the 101 for growling. You know, these brutal death metal screams and guttural shrieks and cries and whatnot, the different techniques that he's got. And I asked him to provide a short demonstration on camera. And I had a lot of fun. That was totally not prepared as well, like everything we do in this podcast. And it's pretty uncommon for the rest of the content that we have. So I hope you enjoy this. But seriously, just go back and revisit the entire episode because I think it's also really fun and teaches you how difficult it is to monetize and to grow a business out of music. Let's go.
How do you learn how to sing with bass, and how do you you took lessons, I guess, but like, what do you do in order not to fuck up your voice forever?
Well, at first I never took any lessons for that. I just learned by myself in my car most of the time, because people maybe not know, but this kind of vocal practice, when you do it at home, you have to have very tolerant neighbors because it's very loud. And it's noise. I mean, for example, my vocals, because I think most of the people don't know what I'm talking about. I have 5 main kind of vocal. The first
Can we go through them? Can you demonstrate the 5 of them?
I can. So the first one is death metal, pretty high, pretty low. It's then I've got the high pitch, which is and something more hardcore.
That's pretty
and then
hardcore,
the last one, the big squeal. And
that one is the brie.
United. That's the brie.
How did the brie story come about? Like,
It
just because you're French.
it come pretty stupidly because I realized that I was doing the this kind of voice.
Yeah.
And when for some words where there's E inside, when I wanted to go down the E, it really sounds like a pig that you that you get. I was like, that's very funny. Let's use that as a gimmick. And some singers were trying to get close to that with inhaling vocals, but I only exhale to do the screams.
I inhale. Can you do it exhaling? I thought it was inhaling all the time.
I don't know. Everything is exhale.
I inhale to do the high pitched. So that's, oh my God. Like,
yeah, lots of people inhaling, but yeah, I do everything by exhaling, including my pig squeal. And that's why, for me, when I sing, every kind of vocals I do are using my fake vocal cords, not the spoken vocal cords, but the fake one above, who are more like huge membranes to protect the spoken vocal cords. And I went to a doctor, a throat doctor, who put a camera in my throat, and he told me, well, your vocal cords are safe because you don't use them when you scream. And that's also why I can do all my screams, as you saw, without any warm-up and without hurting myself. I mean, I could be totally mute because of a cold. I can still do my...
Oh my God.
It's a great comfort for a singer, trust me.
It's a great comfort. Like, I love karaoke, and then I fucking destroy my voice because I don't know how to sing properly. And, and sometimes I go for a growling style. And it's like, no, not gonna happen. The next day, I don't.
With this kind of techniques, you're pretty safe. What, of course, at first it hurts a bit. It's like a new muscle. You have to get used to it. So of course, at first it's pretty painful, but then you're safe.
Yeah. For our audience, don't try without an adult and supervision because you might fuck up your vocal cords.
That was fun, wasn't it? Cool. Let's jump into the next highlight. This is a very special episode for me as well. Probably one of the most creative ones we've done so far, in which one of my best friends, Josh Felberg, who's actually been a customer of MarsBased for many, many years, a great person overall, and somebody I deeply admire and respect. And he said, man, can I interview you for your podcast? I said, why would we do that? But at the moment, it sounds kind of like a crazy idea. But then I slept on it, and I said, like, well, why not? We actually speak a lot about other companies, but we don't really speak about ourselves that much. And so Josh was very intentional about drilling deep into the company culture of MarsBased, and we speak about transparency. We speak about, like, why am I so outspoken in politics, for instance? How do I combine my multiple projects with MarsBased, ambitions? And I've selected this particular part of the episode because it's one of the longest episodes we've recorded. But this part in which he touches really, somewhat not confidential, but an uncomfortable part of business, which is, are you going to sell the company?
It's sort of all the tech companies, they sort of strive to not pay any tax, and they make out the sort of self-made billionaire CEOs. But actually, if you look at the infrastructure or rather like how the company operates, like whether it's Tesla, Amazon, Netflix, they're ultimately all built on a government-created infrastructure, which needs tax money to exist, right? So it's sort of ironic that they then kind of go the other way and they claim, oh, I'm against big taxes and I'm not going to pay any taxes or as little as possible. And they sort of claim it is all self-made, whereas actually you can't have big internet infrastructure in simple, as a very simple...
People universities.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, we all know that the internet was created out of university. The World Wide Web was created by Tim Berners-Lee. None of that was made by those other guys. They built on top of it, right? And that was funded through tax money. But talk about investment and sort of growing big. You say you don't want any of this regulation and everything. MarsBased has got quite big. Tell me in a second. I'm not going to ask for your revenue numbers, but I'm not sure how many staff you've got. I mean, if I remember, it's 20-something. I'm sure you've been approached about investing and having people invest in you and potentially being acquired. What's your thought around that? Would you ever accept it? Because you've got quite, if they were aligned with your values or anything, and you felt, actually, this might be a good idea because it can help us grow and kind of continue our mission, excuse the pun, mission to MarsBased, Would you rule it out forever, or what are your thoughts on that?
We'd have to consider it. I mean, throughout the years, yeah, we've had there's two things here. Investment doesn't really make sense. Why would you invest in an agency? Some people do it to make sure they can just like scale shit up and kind of like blow up and open an office in 50 countries, right? Or 50.
Well, you're basically buying a team of devs in your case, right? Like you've got all the infrastructure set up. That's why
I've had people like I remember last year there was this Israeli investor with whom I have a great friendship with. It's like, dude, I'm ready to like make something big in Spain. Do you want to become the next big consultancy? We could totally pour a few million into the company and then just help you to scale up. We've done this in Israel. And I'm like, thank you, but I don't want to do that. Like, what's the point? Like, it's a great offering, but not for me, not for my co-founders, not for the company. So that one was turned down right away. Acquisition, that's a different conversation. We've had acquisition talks over the years, namely twice it's always our biggest client, right? The two times were our biggest clients, two separate companies that, you've been working for them for a few years. You got a big team there and they're your biggest client. At a certain point, I don't know if it's intentional or not. They might know that they are your biggest client. They're like, okay, let's talk about doing something bigger, which always comes down to how about you join our company? Like we buy your team and you're part of the company. You can run it independently with this and that, blah, blah, blah. So, and then you're stuck between a rock and a hard place because you don't want to say no to your client. You definitely want to entertain the conversation, but what's the protocol, right? You don't want to lose them. In both cases, we politely turned them down. Like we followed protocol. We had advisors in this, some of our best friends in the industry. And so we had to turn them down because they were not, one of them was definitely not aligned with the way we perceive it. Was a bigger consultancy. And they like, we said like, how's it going to be like on the first day after the acquisition? And they're like, well, so you people will have to go to the office and then you're like, no, that's not going to happen. Well, I mean, there's always a price for everything. And, give me 2 billion for MarsBased. So like, I'll sell it tomorrow. But that's not going to happen. We know that's not going to happen. Cool. For the next highlight, I'm going to go back some years before we actually started the podcast. We recorded this event of Startup Grind, an event that we used to organize and we ran for almost 11 years. And more often than not, we would cover founder stories, investment, scaling the business, management, leadership, company culture, and whatnot. But on rare occasions, I would bring the CTOs because I don't know of many companies that the CTO in Spain can actually give good conversation in English and is a co-founder and knows how to speak in front of an audience. And in this case, I found the perfect match. Elisenda Bow, co-founder and CTO of Billings, a company that was acquired by Apple a few years back. And of course, they really wanted to nerd out and talk about technology, but the audience wasn't the right one. At Startup Grind, we had entrepreneurs, people from corporate, investors, and whatnot, but not so many developers. Therefore, we don't really dig down very deep into technology. Of course, we cover technology because at the time we were speaking about TensorFlow, we were speaking about AI, machine learning, how to hire engineers. And that must have been around 2017, if I remember correctly, 2017, 18, something like that. But in this episode, I remember it had a lot of fun moments. Haley is such a great speaker. She's inspirational and fun at equal parts. And I remember that I started more or less around that time to ask about the worst day at the office. I wanted people to, to share the lows of entrepreneurship. And more often than not, I was also asking the most expensive fuck up, but also wanted to know, like, on a personal level, how did you feel? What did you do to overcome this? Mental issues that we all suffer from, and I speak pretty openly about. I wanted to open up on stage in front of an audience, and I think we had a very, very insightful conversation, and I like to remember fondly this episode, this event with Ellie. So let's just take a look.
I wouldn't say that here the rhythm is less like, I think usually I tend to think that Palo Alto or like Silicon Valley, they have very good working hours.
Yeah.
Because
I'm just not meaning that. They're just kind of more business oriented. They tend to take decisions very fast. Whereas here we're more like, yeah, I'll postpone this decision to like next month.
No, that doesn't happen.
Okay, doesn't happen in your company.
I don't
You're
think
lucky.
that. I don't think that happens to us. We're really quick at taking decisions. I don't think we have a different pace. I think most of the problems are mostly like how do you organize, because we have also people in Taipei. So sometimes like finding the right meeting time when you have US, Barcelona, and Taipei, it's just impossible. It doesn't work. Somebody has to be in a call at 1 a.m. or 2. But apart from that.
Right. A bit of quick questions before we open up the floor for other people's questions. Like, what has been your worst day at the office as a founder?
I think.
We like to open up here.
Worst day at the office.
Something you really struggle with, and you took like a terrible decision, or
sometimes like it's not exactly the question you asked, but like one of like my biggest problems is when somebody from the team, like people that you respect a lot and they're team leads and you rely on them a lot, they come to you and they look at you like you have all the answers.
Yeah.
They look at you like, I'm gonna ask you, I don't know, what's the future, what we're gonna be doing in 1 year or 2 years. And they're looking at you like you must have all the answers, right? But you don't have them. Most of the time it's like you're taking guesses as educated as you can, and you're sharing with the team and you're open for ideas. So maybe that's the path, but maybe it isn't. So one of the moments that I struggle mostly with is when people look at you and they're expecting you to have the right perfect answer for any single problem that there might be, you know? And they're like, I mean, I'm just trying to lead this thing, but
we're a startup just trying to figure out every day.
I don't have the perfect solution for everything, so we're gonna just keep figuring out as we go.
Oh, now this is a really good one. I really, really like this episode with Jamon Holmgren, one of the co-founders of Infinite Red, a company we look up to, a company that had a podcast that was called Building Infinite Red, in which the co-founders sort of group discussed building the company very openly, and it was great. It was I have listened to that podcast about 3 times, all of the episodes, because they're very inspirational and insightful and instructive for companies like us. We look up to them. We've never really worked together, although we keep in each other's minds. They're really fun, and you will see it. Damon, despite being a CTO, really knows how to talk in public, and he's got a great sense of humor. He also loves tractors. If you follow him on Twitter, you will know what I'm speaking about. And we had a very, very good conversation about the pains of building agencies, the pains of bootstrapping, the pains of leaning on the side of quality, not quantity, being a super specialized company when they decided to go all in on React Native and stop doing Rails like they had been doing for many, many years, just to be clear that they specialize in only one thing. And it was, you know, one of the pinnacles of this episode was when he started recounting the parable of the rich man and the fisherman. And I don't want to spoil it for you, so I'd rather have you watch it, because I think it explains very well what we do at the Bootstrap and lifestyle businesses. So let's take a look.
So about 10 years into my first agency, I met a couple of other guys, actually 3 other guys, Ken Miller, Todd Worth, and Gant Laborde. And we decided that we were going to merge our companies together. So at the beginning, it was just me, Todd, and Ken. And when we kind of got things together, we would have these long discussions, you know, in Zoom. And it was really great. And eventually I was like, why don't we do a podcast? Because there's so many cool things that we talk about that it feels like we could just make this a public discussion and people would enjoy it. And so Building Infinite Red which is building.infinite.red on the web. You can go find it. Was born, and we went through the first season, and then Gant actually joined as an owner for the second season. And Ken left us, actually, incidentally, to go work for a product company. And because it turns out that it really is two different type of people, and for him, the idea of doing consulting, just didn't match well with what he wanted to do. Is totally fine. What's really cool is that we're still good friends with Ken. We went and Gant and I were down there last April, and went to his house and went to lunch with him, and we're great friends with him. But it's just it works better with certain personalities. So Building Infinite Red was born. We did one season, we did another season. We've talked about a third season. We want to do a third season, but in the meantime, we had sort of gotten to where we had said what we wanted to say, and I think we would have to relaunch it with maybe a little different focus, because a lot of the stuff just holds up over time.
It does. Put out, it surprisingly does.
Surprisingly well. Yeah, pre-pandemic, it wasn't. Yeah, we weren't doing this when everybody was remote and stuff like that. So there's maybe some new things to talk about.
That was way back, way before people started jumping on the cool wagon of the podcast. Must have been 2017, 18, something like that. When you guys
that's when we did the podcast, but we were remote in 2014. So almost 10 years ago.
Because I met Ken, must have been 2015, something like that, in San Francisco. Yeah. That's my original connection to Infinite Red. And one of the reasons I bring this up is because oftentimes, and you will also know this, is agencies, and more so bootstrap companies, agencies usually are bootstrap, are perceived as unambitious projects, right?
Yeah, it's true.
However, we stand the test of time, because right now, companies are going down like flies, and especially startups, right? Or companies that are based solely on growth and no real financials to back them.
Yeah.
So they're, favorable weather companies, fair weather companies, I think you call them, right, in English. So my point being, there's not a lot of literature around building agencies. Everybody tells you about building product, the ABC of entrepreneurship, right? Get some friends, get a co-founder, talk to customers, find an idea, find product market fit, ideally not raise capital in the meantime, but a lot of people have to, because they're just not good at sales. Build something, try to scale it up, blah, 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 raise another round after every 12 months, raise some money, and so on and so forth, right? However, if you're trying to learn how to create an agency, there's not a lot of good content out there. I think people assume that it's kind of like freelancing, but scaling it up. There's so many things that just don't fit this description. So that's why I think that podcast, if you really want to start an agency, you should consume it from beginning to end, right?
I appreciate that. That's really kind of you to say. And you're right. There isn't a lot of, there really isn't a model to follow there. I think partially because, a lot of Silicon Valley kind of looks down their nose a little bit. The ones that are the big ones out there, Pivotal and whatnot, they have a certain kind of goal and way of working that fits what they like to do. And I'm connected with a lot of people that are in operations and leadership within larger agencies, and they do have a different mindset. It's very much like push type of a mindset. There's sort of this kind of negative wording of saying that you're building a lifestyle business, a business that's sort of built around your life rather than trying to be ambitious. And I get that, but I don't optimize for dollars and cents necessarily. I don't optimize for perceived stature in the world. We do optimize for certain types of impact. So impact is part of it. One of our core pillars is significant positive impact. But we feel like we can do that in different ways than building some sort of, startup that changes the world. What we really love at the end of the day is to work and build things with our friends, and, build things with people that we care about, and build a great life for our families. Happiness, we're optimizing for happiness and fulfillment and contentedness. things like that. And at the end of the day, you can kind of like throw away your family and throw away your personal life and your health and everything else and chase the dollar or, you know, the big splashy startup. And then what? You know, someone else probably runs it after a while, and you're stuck there with, you know, with not a lot. You have a lot of money, but like, what else? So I really think that, you know, there's this. I've told this story countless times, and it's not my story, but it's a kind of a parable, if you will, that I think is very interesting. There's this fisherman who is he takes his boat out and he goes fishing in the morning. He goes from, you know, he sleeps in, so he's probably going out around, you know, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, depending on the day. You know, go out and he'll catch a couple fish, and then he comes back in and by noon, and you know, he has lunch with his wife and he takes a siesta, and then maybe he goes into town and he you know, kind of hangs out with his friends, has some wine, and then, you know, he and his wife go dancing in the evening, and then he goes and you know, hangs out with his kids and goes to sleep. In the morning he does it again, and one day a businessman is there. He's on vacation in this, you know, this kind of like fishing village, and he sees this guy going out and doing it. He says, "Why don't you just stop at noon? Why don't you keep fishing until 5 o'clock? You know, why don't you work harder?" And the guy says, "Well, why would I do that?" He said, "Well, you can take the extra fish that you catch, and you can sell them, and you'd get more money, and then you could buy a bigger boat, and you'd get more fish because you could hire people to come on the boat, help you with it, and then eventually you could get many boats, and, you know, have a whole fleet of fishing boats, and be managing all of that, and you know, like you just be doing really well." And the fisherman said, "Well, what would I do then?" He said, "Well, you could sell the thing. You could, you know, you could go public or something. You could really make tons and tons of money, and you could retire early." And the guy says, "Well, what would I do after I retire?" And he says, "Well, you could sleep in, you could go out fishing, you could come back in, have lunch, take a nap, go dancing, have some wine, hang out with your kids, and go to sleep." You know, it's the same thing at the end of the day. You know, you're the fisherman and the businessman. He's like, "I'm already doing that. Like, make a business that allows you to have the life that you want."
Great. That episode with Damon was actually one of my favorites. I could talk for hours. Okay, we speak often, once per quarter, every few months, and we can always learn so much from people like Damon, who've been in the industry for many, many years, running a company similar to ours. So we can, you know, chat back and forth about the pains of growing these kind of businesses. So for the next highlight, we have Liz Dunn, a very good friend of mine that resides in the States. I met her many, many years ago. Must have been 2017 when they were on sort of break with her partner, traveling around Europe. And I hosted them at a Startbrand event, and we had very good conversations. We emptied many glasses of wine over the course of a few days in Barcelona, where we discussed business, investment, technology, innovation, and whatnot. I said, like, "Oh, you have to be in my podcast someday." I didn't know I was going to have a podcast. But we had a very, very nice conversation about innovation and entrepreneurship, and her long experience in being in management positions in Silicon Valley. And one of the topics I really, really wanted to cover with her was imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome. In this case, I share my imposter syndrome being an angel investor, but we talked about it at length. This is just a part of a very long conversation about many other topics, but I wanted to focus on this one because it doesn't get much press. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't get spoken about as much as we should. So I hope you like this part of the conversation with Liz Dunn.
Hard question here. Let's open up a little bit. Imposter syndrome. Did you get it when you started investing? Like, am I really an investor? Can I put it on LinkedIn? Do I really want to, you know, advertise me as, like, promote me as an investor? Am I investing enough money to be called an investor or not really? I still got it, and I've been investing for 6 years now. So it's like, am I really an angel investor when I never put more than 10 grand in a company? And I don't know, like something like this. I still get it a lot.
I know what you mean. I mean, you know, being a woman in Silicon Valley, I kind of always have it. Like, it's always just like sitting on my shoulder. Like, do you belong here? And you get treated that way too. Like, do you belong here? Like, so
Really?
I take that feeling and I use it to make me like show up harder. But yeah, I mean, you know, especially at the point where I'd invested, I don't know, less than $10,000. Sure, I wasn't running around telling people I was an investor. Then once I got up to, you know, I don't know, more, and I put that on LinkedIn, then all these people come out of the woodwork trying to pitch you. So then I took it off. Right?
Yeah, the wheels start turning, right?
Yeah, and but now, I mean, I sort of feel like I'll really feel like an investor when I get my first like profitable exit. Actually, I think one of Zach Coleus's investments is about to cash out, not hard, but like a 2Xer. So then I'll have like that. But I, you know, my plan had been, because I didn't think of myself as a real investor, well, I'm going to angel invest and I'm going to have a couple of successes and then I'll go work at a big VC company, right? Because I can show them, here's my resume. Like, I don't have, you know, an accounting or business background, but I've made these successful bets. And and the more that I do this, the more I'm like, why should I work for a VC?
Yeah. What's the incentive? I mean, probably, yeah, you can make like a 75x return, something like that, on something crazy.
Part of it was I thought I needed that for legitimacy. So I wouldn't feel like an imposter. And now I'm like, nah.
All right, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, well, if I have a business card, it's real.
But for me, it's like the reason I want to become an investor is to work less, not more. But if you go to a VC fund, you will work like, you know, until like the crazy hours around the clock, just because they're a VC and they got to have like these returns, because otherwise the fund loses money, and 75% of VC funds worldwide, they lose money. They never return the money to the investors, right? So it's like, why do you want to go in a business that it's inherently bleeding money, right?
Well, I'll send you this article and you can show it in the
I'll link it in the show notes. Yeah.
But basically it talks about how in a sense, VC they're so beholden to their returns that, like, for example, you look at WeWork, the board knew it had a problem and it just kept letting that guy do whatever he wanted. And the VCs were like, this does not make sense. But then they didn't want to lose. They didn't want to like lose their money. So they kept just going along with it. It's a great article about how basically it's their desire to not to have a return on their fund that made them, you know, prop up a failing business for so long. It's a great article. I'll send it to you. It's basically like how VC is breaking business.
Good. And now for the next one. This is actually a part of a series of 3 episodes with Mike Cunningham from Transcend Partners, in which we discuss M&A, everything about M&A. We discuss sales side, buy side. We discuss advisors, boutiques, prices, fees, retainers, deadlines, documents, protocol, etiquette. We discuss everything. And I think we will record 3 episodes more because Mike is a great friend. He's super generous with his time. He's somebody I like working with, and I really enjoy all the conversations over tacos that we have offline. And every now and then I'm like, man, it's been a while since we recorded with Mike. And when you will watch this part of the clip, you will understand why you want to consume the entire 3 episodes we recorded with Mike. So let's jump right into it.
What's 1 or 2 clauses that only rookie entrepreneurs would accept? Something that, you know, seasoned entrepreneurs, when they see on the LOIs, they're like, fuck no, I'm not getting this.
Yeah, so I mean, this exclusivity period is one that almost nobody really understands too well, or they just don't know what the norms are. So it's kind of, they get an LOI and it says 80 days of exclusivity.
And they're like, oh, 80 days
don't
is
really
nothing,
know.
right?
Yeah, they're like, makes sense to me. You know, they're going to be investing in.
What's the lowest you can get it to?
Well, I mean, there's
30
no
days?
lowest. Yeah, I mean, 30 days would be quite low. But I think, you know, you also want it to be everything you do in this, you want to be kind of in good faith and two-way, because the more it seems, you don't want to be too one-sided. You need to be doing things in a, you know, kind of a partnership way. Obviously, you're representing your interests and you want it to be certainly not negative for you, but as favorable as possible. But you also don't want to be unrealistic and demanding things that are way off market. So this is another thing an entrepreneur, who doesn't have experience in this, they could say, no, I'm not giving more than 15 days of exclusivity. And every acquirer, I'm not saying this has ever happened, but it could easily happen. Every acquirer would say that's ridiculous. This is a joke. I'm not going to do this process with this guy. He's demanding outrageous things and he has no idea what he's talking about. So it's kind of,
all right.
We know kind of what's the norm, what's in the market,
the standards.
what's reasonable, and and what's reasonable but very good for our end, because the range of reasonability is very wide, and if they, and I would say many times, especially if they're not dealing with a professional advisor, they're going to try to push things in their favor. Why not? Who wouldn't? It's kind of, if I know I'm just, dealing with a CEO or, somebody from the board in this process, then, why not, make it as favorable for myself? So, so it's kind of, so that's, I think quite normal on the side of the buyer in those situations.
Oh man, this is a really good one. John O'Nolan. That's actually a big achievement for me personally, as a longtime user and fanboy of Ghost, one of the technologies I love the most, one of the products I really admire. I've been following for many, many years. My personal website is built with Ghost. I really like him. I really like John as a leader. He's a charismatic entrepreneur, charming person, super generous with his time. I sent him an email. Do you know me, John? I really like to host you on the episode. And within 2 minutes, it said like, yes, let's do it. Let's find a time. Boom. And in 3 days, we were recording. Like, that doesn't happen with this sort of caliber and these people high up the ranks of entrepreneurship and technology. So yeah, I really admire him. Super thankful. We discussed everything. We didn't discuss everything because we didn't have time and I was nervous, as you will be able to tell from the episode. But we had a really, really fun moment towards the end of the episode in which he actually, he saw and he caught the reference, a reference I like to use from Hot Ones, one of my favorite YouTube shows. And he's like, man, that's from Hot Ones, right? I appreciate the reference. I'm like, okay, you're the first one to actually get it. In more or less 100 episodes, I've been using these sentences. Like, I'm rolling the red carpet for you. Here's your camera. I like that style towards the end of the interview. And so we started riffing for a couple of minutes about Hot Ones and his favorite episode and whatnot. And I think that was really, really fun. The entire episode is fantastic. It's phenomenal. But I think this part is pretty short. It's pretty fun. It's good to kind of like wrap up this episode, even though we got one more. And so I hope you enjoyed this conversation with John Nolan. I was going to go into that, but I think from this answer you just given me, I've inferred how not to use Ghost, which I think it's as valuable, if not more. So, well, let's just wrap it here because you've been extremely generous with your time. I'm rolling out the carpet for you. You got 1 minute left to say how we can help you, how we can help Ghost, and any announcements or anything you want to share with our community.
Love the Hot Ones reference. Yeah. If you want to check out Ghost,
one to get it. Yes.
I would, if you publish online and you have an email list or you have thoughts to share with the world, check out ghost.org. We're doing a lot of interesting things.
Favorite Hot Ones episode so far?
I mean, the DJ Khaled's always a classic, right? Just for its incredible failure. What was the one I watched just last week? Oh, Ryan Reynolds. That one was really good.
Yeah, that's very good.
There's a few. I'm struggling to think of them all on the spot. Jimmy Fallon is the one I just watched. He was very funny. What's yours?
Shaquille O'Neal, probably. Like, I don't understand him most of the time we're speaking, but the faces and the entire performance is superb. That for me is like a all-time great. Ricky Gervais.
The Gordon Ramsay one was good as well, just because of Gordon Ramsay, because of how angry he got throughout the whole thing. Like, why do you do this?
Exactly. They're really good ones. And then I'm really surprised by people who you wouldn't expect it, but they tolerate spiciness so well. Like Charlize Theron, for instance. And I'm surprised.
Yeah, Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah, exactly. Some people are like, yeah, it's spicy, but you know, I'm like, holy fuck. Like I have the bomb I have it in my fridge. It's like literally unbearable, stuff like that. I love spicy, and that's why I buy all of these terrible sauces. And when I see some of the guests that they don't break a sweat, I'm like, no, I don't know how they can do it. But anyways,
I'm a big hot sauce fan.
And for the last one, oh man, this is the banger. This is the banger of the episode. So yeah, we have Dorian Carroll, great friend of mine, great person to converse, super interesting, super knowledge about technology, super experience being a CTO for companies Silicon Valley and VP of engineering and technology since, I don't know, for 40 years right now, close to 50. I could be mistaken. But yeah, he's worked for companies like EA, like he's worked for Technorati, for Blogger, for Amazon, and for many other companies. When I met him back in the time, he was the CTO/CIO of Zynga, you know, the gaming company. And I really wanted to wrap up this special 5 years anniversary of the podcast special episode with a banger. And the last one is his technical fuck up, in which, well, let's put it like that. It is a very hot one.
An electrician had been working out on the street, and he wasn't certified. He made some mistake. Luckily, he didn't kill himself. But what he did in doing that, it actually started a fire in the data center. And so I mean, we were literally on fire. This wasn't just a emergency. The software is on fire. You know, that people often say. No, that the data center was on fire. They were able to put the fire out.
Literal fire, fire.
They were able to put the fire out, and we realized we weren't going to have power in that data center for a while. And we rented a trailer and unplugged all of our equipment and stacked it in the back of this trailer and drove it over to a new data center we had been looking at, and just we moved the whole thing and we got the site back up and running.
How long had elapsed between
we had realized we needed to change data centers, so we had a footprint in the new data center to some extent, but we hadn't been ready to flip the switch. So I think, if I recall correctly, we were able to flip the switch to at least put up a sorry page. And then over the course of, I think, several hours, we were able to bring up the rest of the services.
Maybe it was somebody who wanted to speed up that process. He was getting upset that this was not moving and the CEO was not approving the budgets. Like, fuck it, I'm going to burn the office down if you don't do it. Anyways, last question to. So yeah.
It's a very, very, very nice way to end this special episode. We learned a lot from Dorian. You can go and watch also the Startup Grind episode we recorded with him, where we discuss more technology. We're nerded out for an hour about, React, Node.js, JavaScript, Ruby, Amazon, cloud, and whatnot. We discuss a lot of technologies. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this special compilation of the 5 years anniversary of Life on Mars podcast. There's going to be 5 more years, I assume. We enjoy doing this. We want to thank you for your support. We want to thank you for being there, for sending suggestions of content, suggestions of speakers, for sending questions. And I'd like to ask you for more questions. If you made it this far, let us know in the comment section down below, because you really and truly deserve a gold medal for being a great supporter and for always being there for us. And so, you got some questions for the company, for me, for my co-founders, for some of our employees, for David, the marketing guy, whomever. Just let us know in the comment section down below. Send it also via email at hola@marsbased.com. And as always, if you like this show, just recommend us, share it, retweet, repost, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and I'll see you all in the next episode.